Hello, my amazing tribe. I'm excited to connect with you through this video. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into timeline of women's suffrage in Arizona. This is a timeline of women's suffrage in Arizona. The first women's suffrage bill was brought forward in the Arizona Territorial legislature in 1883, but it did not pass. Suffragists worked to influence the Territorial Constitutional Convention in 1891 but lost by only 3 votes. That year, the Arizona Suffrage Association was formed. In 1897, tax-paying women gained the right to vote in school board elections. Suffragists from both Arizona and around the country continued to lobby the territorial legislature and organize women's suffrage groups. In 1903, a women's suffrage bill passed, but it was vetoed by the governor. In 1910, suffragists worked to influence the Arizona State Constitutional Convention, but were again unsuccessful. When Arizona became a state on February 14, 1912, an attempt to legislate a women's suffrage amendment to the Arizona Constitution failed. Francis Munds mounted a successful ballot initiative campaign. On November 5, 1912, women's suffrage passed in Arizona. In 1913, the voter registration books were opened to women. In 1914, women participated in their first primary elections. Arizona ratified the 19th Amendment on February 12, 1920. However, Native American women and Latinas would wait longer for full voting rights. As we enter this new chapter, let's navigate the complexities of ERS and unravel its multifaceted nature. Lord Masterson of Prescott introduces a partial women's suffrage bill for women to vote in school board elections, but it fails. A first Arizona chapter of the Women's Christian Temperance Union WCTU is formed. Arizona Women's Equal Rights Association AWERA is founded in Phoenix. Let's now enter the realm of ERS and discover the fascinating stories it has to tell. Josephine Brawley Hughes and Laura M. Johns testify on women's suffrage at the Territorial Constitutional Convention. Women's suffrage fails at the convention by 3 votes. Hughes is part of the founding of the Arizona Suffrage Association. Johns speaks in Phoenix, Tempe, and Tucson on women's suffrage. January, Hughes attends the National American Women's Suffrage Association NAWSA convention in Washington, D.C. Johns addresses the territorial legislature on women's suffrage. A bill is passed that allows women taxpayers to vote in school board elections. Carrie Chapman Catt visits Phoenix to advocate for women's suffrage. A women's suffrage bill passes the lower house of the legislature. The school board suffrage law is declared invalid by the Arizona Territorial Supreme Court. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of ERS to reveal its true essence. Leader P. Robertson works to promote a women's suffrage bill, but it does not pass. A women's suffrage convention is held in Phoenix. Governor Alexander Oswald Brody vetoes the women's suffrage bill. Women's suffrage movement in Arizona stalls, even as NAWSA sends field worker Mary Celsius Bradford to revive interest. Laura Clay and Francis Munds lobby the territorial legislature on women's suffrage, but the suffrage bill does not pass. The territorial legislature passes a literacy test law, which is supported by the Arizona Equal Suffrage Association. Get ready for an exciting part as we dive into ERS. Laura Gregg from NAWSA is sent to Arizona to continue organizing suffrage groups around the state. October 10, the Arizona Constitutional Convention meets. Suffragists lobby the delegates for women's suffrage to be added to the Constitution, but are unsuccessful. February 14, Arizona becomes a state. A women's suffrage amendment bill fails in the Arizona state legislature by 1 vote. Munds starts a petition campaign to get women's suffrage on the November ballot. July 5, Munds gets more than 4,000 signatures, enough to get the women's suffrage initiative on the ballot. October, suffragists have a women's suffrage booth at the Arizona State Fair. November 5, women's equal suffrage becomes part of the Constitution of Arizona. Another literacy test law is passed, reducing the number of Mexican-American voters. In January, the Arizona state legislature holds an emergency session and passes a bill opening the voter registration books to women. March 15, women in Arizona are allowed to register to vote for all elections. May, NAWSA holds a celebratory parade in New York City for Arizona, Kansas, and Oregon granting women's suffrage. Majudal represents Arizona. Women participate in the Arizona primary elections. Congressional Union organizers Josephine Casey and Jane Pincus come to Arizona. April 20, the suffrage special stops briefly in Maricopa and then arrives in Tucson. April 21, the suffrage special arrives in Phoenix. As we move forward, let's uncover the untold stories and fascinating intricacies of ours. A February 12, special legislative session convened to ratify the 19th Amendment. It is ratified the same day. Native Americans gain United States citizenship. With our foundation established, it's time to explore ours and its relevance to our overarching theme. A ban on Native Americans voting in Arizona is overturned by the Arizona Supreme Court. Now, let's shift our perspective and explore ours from a different angle. A Voting Right Act helps Latina voters exercise their right to vote in Arizona. Get ready to immerse yourself in the world of ours as we examine its impact and relevance. Our English literacy tests for voting are outlawed in the state. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of this video.